called the criminal records.
Oh, right, yes, right.
It's really basically that anybody who deals normally with vulnerable people or children
Yes.
need to have these checks. And parish clerks, up to now, and certainly that continues to be the case, are not required to have them. But as I say, because I've had to have it for another avenue, then of course you get the benefit of that DBS check. So, and that's it basically. Unless anybody's got any questions.
Any questions, Ryan? Seeing you're good. Okay, going. So the working group report. We start with the footpaths group.
People keep coming to see me or phoning me about the business up by the water tower, that they can't get through the gate. Lots of people are climbing over, under, through, and all I've said is that they need to email the council, obviously not us, and that there's nothing we can do about it because it is private land. So I'm being inundated with people saying, oh, can you do something so we can get through?
I mean, it certainly is worth them being in touch with the...
That's what I said. I said just contact them so council.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on footpaths? One thing I was going to ask, potentially, if the footpaths group might be willing to do is we've got, all of us hopefully now, the map which has the numbered paths on. I wonder whether it would be possible over a period of time to try and make sure we visited each path. Because I think there are certain paths that get very well used and there are other paths that maybe don't. So if the work group is up for that, it would be good if we could maybe report back on a couple of paths each month maybe. Just to, because I think we've got 20 something paths across the village.
Yes, it'd be good to have that map and then we can.
Okay. If there's nothing else on. Yes, Aidan.
The top car park, the old car park, who's dealing with that? Is that the footpath team or is that the Village Green car park into the block report?
I think
we won't designate that car park, did we? Was it would it be the footpath team or would it be the... Because we need to sort that bin out and that sign, the sign's still in the back of my van. We've got to get that sorted.
I mean, in some respects it's the footpaths working group because there's a footpath in effect through the middle of it, so it's something you will be dealing with. But in terms of the bin, I think you chased
that with Sedgemoor, and it's on their radar.
Nice.
Okay.
That's not. Is that a good enough answer? Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
On the footpaths, I've reported it before that there's a pothole outside the Red Cow. It's now developed into quite a substantial hole.
Is this road or footpath?
Pardon?
Is this a highway?
Highways.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up next.
So just to check, is that in the highway or is that on the pavement?
On the highway.
It's on the highway. Okay, so we'll move on into the highways reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is both of us. So you go on,
Carol, that's all?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, we'll make sure that's reported.
Obviously I've been driving around Long Burton Road as well. I think Long Burton Road, that'll help us out quite a bit, I reckon, is to get the 30 mile per hour speeder and repeaters in the road tarred. Because there's quite a few around the village, but they've certainly worn down, cracked, gone away and stuff like that. Because obviously road services do deteriorate. But if we get the 30 mile an hour white tar ones put on the Burton Road and on this road as well, up to the 20 mile an hour sign, or whatever, then along the Station Road and Road, I think that's a good presence as well for people to see, because it's point blank right in your vision.
So again, that would be alien. We'd need to report that the Randall basically need refurbishing.
And there is quite a few potholes appearing in Burton Road, Station Road, Ann Road, Brent Street. There's quite a few appearing now, which I'm monitoring. If they get bigger and bigger, then obviously we need to keep an eye on.
One thing I may well do, if it's okay with the council, is I'll share with everybody, to be honest, there's a website that you can actually, while you're out about, report potholes.
Yeah.
And they do tend to respond quite well to those.
Right, okay.
So, as long as they meet the criteria of being big enough. Okay. Anything else on highways?
So,
Okay, audit and monitoring staff and group haven't met yet. Same for the shop liaison group, but as Owen said earlier on, we'll look to be having meetings of these before our next parish council meeting. Buildings working group, there'll be a report. We've got on the agenda an item relating to community shop matters, so that will come up there. So who was on the village green car park?
Well, I was on the village green, yes. There's a bench in the park, the middle one, where there's 3 in a row by the side. The top of the middle bench table, rather, is winky wonky, needs nailing down. Otherwise, everything else was okay.
Yeah.
The toilets are the same as they always are.
Yeah.
No, the grass has been cut, bins have been emptied. Sometimes they're a bit full, but it does depend on the weather and who's using them.
Can I just ask a question in terms of the toilets? There was a report that there was a leak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Has that been looked at?
Last one, when in their basement was still leaking.
Is it?
Yeah, it's still leaking at the bottom there.
Which basin?
Gents.
Oh, no, I
The
don't
floor
know.
of the, yeah.
The neighbours like it.
Yeah, they've agreed you would.
We need to get.
We used the plan that we used before. Very, very efficient.
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
if you are.
anything else on Village Green? In that one meeting, thank you. Next is the parish surgery report, which will be brief.
It'll be very brief actually. We had, yesterday morning, we had zilch. Apart from, it wasn't up and so we were able to have our buildings working group. Anyway, we didn't do anything else actually.
We did have an apology from Mr. Biggs, who was hoping to be there, but unfortunately couldn't make it, so he said he did send his apologies. Okay, in which case that brings us to the Somerset Council report, which I'll keep brief because there's one other thing we'll deal with. So, just to update, in terms of bus services, you may have seen in the media that the government has given some extra money to extend the £2 bus pass that they have at the moment for usage. That's going on until October, and then from October they're then going to go up to £2.50, and there's further subsidy to keep it at that level. That is I have asked, and that does apply to the 48 that we have through the village, but obviously it also applies to other buses if you get them from outside the village, because I know that a number of people do head off to Limtram and catch the Western bus from there. In terms of road repairs, and Aidy's comment earlier about potholes, there are a huge number of potholes at the moment across the whole of the county. We have had, and it's not unusual to Somerset, the government has given, I think it's something like 250 million extra to authorities to do that. The Somerset Council has got 5 million quid to add to its normal budget for pothole repairs, so they are going to be stepping up the number that they're doing. And they're also looking to change the way that they're dealing with them, because they were trying a new way last year, which has turned out not to work particularly well, in that some of the repairs they were doing were not actually taking, they were coming back out. So that's being reviewed and dealt with. In terms of one of the reasons why there are so many potholes, we had some information given to us about the gritting of last year, and interestingly enough there was twice as much grit and salt used last year than there was the year before. When we had obviously we had bits that were quite mild, we had other bits that were incredibly cold, and that's part of the reason they're saying why they think that road damage has been as bad as it has been. They actually went out on 67 separate occasions, 900-mile round trip each time of when they were doing a trip for the total number of gritters they got, which is 23. And they did a total of, I think they said 70,000, so 83,000 miles in total, and that compares with only 45,000 miles the year before. So it does give you some idea as to how busy they actually were last time. And the final thing I was going to mention was on recycling. Any of you that take cartons or Tetra Packs come to the recycling centre, that's about to stop. Because the collections are now done door to door and they're now taking the Tetra Packs, there's been such a drop in the use of the recycling centre area, they're going to take that away and recycle something else instead. So they haven't told us what they're doing instead, but from now on, just do it through your door-to-door collections. But happy to take any questions if there are any on county matters. Okay. So that moves us on. Moves the agenda to what's next?
Statutory payments.
Ah, thank you. You can want to take us.
Yes, statutory payments under the minute reference 25922. Council agreed on a certain number of statutory payments to be made throughout the year, provided there was no variation of the figures involved, which there are not. So I would like to ask the council to agree to those. And then separately we have just one this month, actually just one payroll services matter of £8.60 for our new payroll provider. I would add that their charges for managing our payroll are about £4 a month less than they were with the previous supplier, which was settled with the council. So at least we're saving a little bit there from that point of view. So basically I need a resolution to approve the statutory and a separate one for the variable.
Okay, so we'll come first. Thank you. Colin. Secondly, all those in favour of the statutory payments, please show.
Thank you.
And the variable payments, which this term is the payroll services, all those in favour that we pay that, please show. That's clearly carried.
Okay. And then the other item is
And I'm going to move on over the page, and Councillor Matthews, you've got a issue you wanted to raise on budget contingency for our expenses.
Thank you, Chair. After last month's eventful meeting, I'd just like to raise a proposal that this council considers standardising its procedures on naming or not naming proposals.
I think, Councillor Matthews, that's the wrong proposal.
Oh, my apologies.
That's all right. That's coming up later on the agenda. This one was the one you were asking about a contingency for out-of-pocket expenses.
My apologies. I've got myself sorry. So yeah, this is a very small matter. I've asked just for a small amount of incidental expenses to be considered by this council, and we'd like the council to consider that actually in doing council business, all of us around this table do incur small costs, some of which you can negate, others need to be expensed in the conduction of council business.
Oh, do you want to comment?
Yeah.
I think you sent around a note.
yeah, the comment really is that, yes, of course, councils do occasionally, from time to time, incur expenses. However, the normal practice is for those to be approved before the expense has actually been incurred. So if somebody actually wants to do something on behalf of the council, they can ask the council for a resolution to approve that expenditure, and sometimes it's up to a certain amount. You know, we might be saying it's up to £20, up to £25, whatever. But it has to be approved by the council before it can just be incurred. That's the procedure for council expenses.
Any comments or questions from members?
I just like to say, every meeting that I've been to is a voluntary thing, and you know, if you don't want to drive to it or anything like that, you don't enter the, you know, the thing. That's all I can say, because it's all meetings that I go to now. I don't, you know, presume I get paid for doing stuff like that. It's all voluntary. That's all I've got to say. Sorry.
Any other comments or questions? Sorry.
Well, yeah, if the rule is that you get approval prior to spending the money, then that's the rule, and you know, that's it.
Well, the reason why it's done that way is because obviously there have been occasions, I think, in the past on some councils where councillors have gone off spending sums of money on behalf of the council, which was never approved by the council. And of course we are using taxpayers' money, so you know we mustn't be frivolous with it, and that's the reason simply why it's done that way. It's a very simple rule, really, but it kind of is the way we operate.
Melina?
We do sometimes have exceptions to that though, don't we?
Well, what we've said is this is the rule. The question I think Councillor Matthews was raising was expenses that were incurred by us as councillors in the doing of our duty, wanted to be able to be claimed. I might be incorrect correct if I'm wrong, John, but that's a different issue to carrying out works for the council anyway. But I mean, normally, as the clerk has said, we've had the situation where members should have expenditure agreed before.
Prior
Yeah.
to going out and spending the money.
I think on my case, I think last year I had some small expenses which I had detailed in emails. This year I didn't have an opportunity to ask that question. I needed to expend some paper prepared for a meeting. It was a few pounds. I didn't see it as a big issue, but it obviously is. So I will take that on board and ask for paper expenses next time.
Right. Moving on to consideration, play agreement updating on the need of funding. Just to update, we at the last meeting it was agreed that I should go and raise the issue with the school as to what equipment we've got, what the kids enjoy and what they would like to see. We've had a response back from Chris Berman. He engaged with, I think it's described them as Key Stage 2 children, went up to the site, had a discussion, talked through what they use and what they thought was positive and what wasn't. The response that he's got is that they like what was described as the older stuff. Children are not risk averse as many of the adults appear to be nowadays. The small seesaw was the least liked piece of equipment, and what they would have liked was a bigger one put back in that actually was a bit more exciting. The alternative to that they have asked is whether we could look at a zip wire, which is something that certainly other parishes have. I mean, Barrow have got, and certainly others have. So if members are in agreement that we sort of look into the possibility of that and see how it could work, potentially, as the green sits at the moment, if you did look at moving where the small seesaw is, there is actually a run along that edge of the green which could potentially work with a zip wire, but as yet we don't know what the costings are likely to be, and we would need to obviously investigate that. But if members are in agreement that we do look into that and bring it back to see how we can go forward with it.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing they have sent to us is one other bit they've added, which was the school said it would be great to be able to use the park, the park they call it, the village green, a bit more. Could we have potentially a diamond painted on the grass each summer so games around us could be undertaken? This could be used by families too. Or alternatively, a short 30-metre running track would be equally popular as children love running and is a very cheap option. In terms of the running track, I think some of you may remember a few years ago we did actually have that on the green, which was done as just a white painted area for the kids to run on. Again, whether it's something that members feel that we could look into and find out what the costings would be of doing that and how it would fit in with our maintenance in terms of grass cutting and whatever. But if you're happy, we investigate that and report back.
Definitely. We said we'd ask the school, so that's the feedback that we're...
Okay, we'll follow up on that and we'll report. Thank you. Next item is email for councillors, domain and setup. And I think, Owen, you looked into
Yeah, I've looked into this. I've actually registered with LCN, the council. What happened was when I first joined the council, 15 odd years ago, I actually went into a domain with my own, on my own registration. I've got my own domain name, and so I just added the council to it. That seemed to be unsatisfactory because it means that should anything happen to me and the old proverbial bus kicks in, you've got no means of accessing the domain. So what I've now done is set up an account with the council, for the council separately, on the council's computer, and we now have an account with LCN domains. So it now falls to us now to decide how best to set up the individual emails within that domain. There's a whole raft of different ways of doing it. I'm not an expert at all in it, so I was going to ask, if you're happy to, I was going to ask David Knott or David's father perhaps, if he can assist us best with setting that up in the right way, because it needs to be easy for you to set up, as well as me setting it up with you. So I mean, if you had a domain, for example, all that would happen is that you'd have your existing email will be forwarded from the domain. So you'd have, say, for example, Tracy at Brent Knoll PC, and that would be forwarded to your normal inbox as a separate item. But there are other ways of doing it, by having a direct email without having a domain. You can do all sorts of different things, but we need to take some advice on it because it's not, as I say, it's not my area at all of expertise. So rather than rush into the wrong thing, I think we ought to get the right advice so that everybody can be set up effectively on the Brent Knoll PC domain. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, good idea, yeah.
So,
Any further comment on that one? If not, can I propose that Owen does that? Thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Parish Hall Committee Council representative. So, as you know, we have the Parish Hall. The Parish Hall has a committee which is made up of both users and elected members. It is something which the Parish Council has had a space on there for some time. It hasn't been occupied for a while, but each year we are advised by the Parish Hall that there is a vacancy should we wish to nominate a councillor to take up that. The role basically is when you are appointed, you become a trustee of the hall, so you are there as a member of the hall committee. You can raise obviously issues relating to parish council matters, but you're not there solely as parish council rep in that sense. You are there also as a trustee of the hall with equal rights as every other member. So could I ask for nominations, please, for a representative? Melina?
I'd like to nominate John Matthews, please.
Mr Chairman, I'd like to nominate Councillor Povey as being a suitable candidate for this position.
Okay, are there any other nominations? No. In which case we have, if we take, we'll vote for whoever you want to vote for. So we'll start with those people who wish to vote for John Matthews, please show.
I'll vote for myself.
You can vote for yourself.
Thank you.
That's two. And those to vote for Aid, please show. 6. I'll abstain because I'm on the whole committee anyway, so I won't vote. So that clearly carries. So AD is going to be the nominee. Owen will notify Sandra Few, who is the secretary of the hall, and she'll send you obviously the paperwork through for your next meeting. Okay. Community shop matters. Updating and decisions. Give us an update.
Yeah, clearly we had a little bit of a delay because Gareth was actually away for a period of nearly a couple of weeks actually. So I wrote to him a few days ago and said, can you please clarify exactly what our options are that we're being given, because there's a little bit of uncertainty about what those options actually were. He came back very promptly, as he often does, and offered us two very clear options. One of those options was to effectively reroute the cable without any substation. In other words, least disruption to some extent, but rerouting the cable and with that option there would be little benefit in terms of any upgrade of the supply. Simply be rerouting what is there. Okay, so it wouldn't require a substation and would be able to be completed in a period of between 4 and 6 months. Option 2, which was the substation option, and of course their preferred option has always been to have a substation on front of the car park. That is their second option. That requires a lot more planning and will take us through to at least 12 months from now in the planning process before we could undertake or even think about undertaking any building work there. So, but with that option, The second option, we have the advantage of getting an upgrade of the supply, which will ultimately enable us, if we so wished, to go with electric chargers and other upgraded electrical supply issues. So the question really for the council to consider is a slightly shorter term option to get the job done and get underway with it, or a longer term option with some benefits. However, even with the shorter term option, if we were to take that, we would be stressing with National Grid that we would like the option to be able to upgrade at some future point once the shop has been developed. So once the shop is in situ, we've built it, then the porter cabin would effectively come out of the mix. That would enable then the National Grid then to upgrade, hopefully, to the substation at some future point, should they agree to it and should we agree to it. Does that kind of...
Yeah, the only thing I was going to ask if you could mention was the other options that have been sort
Yes.
of floated. As to
Yeah,
what you said about those.
there were a couple of options that were thrown in at one of our meetings with them. They tell us that these are options they cannot discuss with us because they involve private property elsewhere, outside of our domain. So they would have to negotiate with property owners, and that is confidential. And so therefore we'd have to rely on them to go back and have those conversations at some point. But inevitably that would create a longish delay because they've got to get agreement from private homeowners in the vicinity. So there are options that they don't like because they say that the delays would be substantial if we were to do that. So they're really saying that the two options we've got are really the two options they're prepared to consider and move forward on and get to work on the planning side.
Any comments or questions?
If we
I'll make Tracy, John indicate, and then Tracy.
Can I ask for an update on the solar side for the new shop? And specifically, I've got a contact for an industry expert to the council.
As far as I'm aware, there's no further update on that.
No.
We've not heard back from our any further information from our architect on that front.
No.
So
No. So that's not been considered at this stage because I guess in any event we're still quite a long way from the build. You know, we're not building next week or the week after. You know, we've got quite a long protracted period before we can put a brick in the ground. So there's plenty of time in some ways to look at those other options. What we've got to establish now before we can move forward is what National Grid are doing. That's the key point, because without National Grid telling us their plans, we can't move forward.
Tracy and John.
if we agree to reroute the cable now, would there be any cost to us if we wanted to do the substation at a later stage?
There may be a small cost for trenching, and we would need to establish that from them. We don't know, it would be a very small cost, it wouldn't be significant. But we would hope that if we went for that lower option, that quicker option, they would be happy to get on with it, and therefore probably not worry us too much. But we would need to clarify that clearly before we put a spade in the ground, so to speak. We need clarity.
Yeah, so back to my third point, previous point, sorry. I spent some time this week personally looking at my own personal conditions on solar. It's the same that I'm very passionate in. And just to forward to the council, there are some incredible solutions around battery storage, about off-grid, about tying in technology in terms of charging batteries that I'd certainly like the council to, the working group to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's certainly something we can take into account. But as Owen said, the key decision for tonight at the moment is sorting out what we can go back to National Grid with as to our position.
The building group discussed this in detail, and I think it's very important that we make a decision, and a firm decision, as to how we go ahead with National Grid. And the easiest option at this moment in time would be the rerouting of the cable. Once the shop is moved, it could well be then that we could consider discussing the possibility of mounting the new unit right in the corner of the play area, which would take it away from the road. So we would win-win, I think, if we do the rerouting. We keep our options open as to the best decision. So I would like to propose that we go to National Grid and we ask them to consider rerouting.
I definitely second that.
And just to confirm, Colin, we're asking them to reroute, but to keep the option open of a substation at a later stage.
Oh,
so we want to make sure they don't do anything that
Absolutely.
blocks that opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Second it.
Okay. Are there any further comments or questions before we come to a vote? No. In which case we have the recommendation that's been put that we go back to National Grid, we ask them to go ahead with the rerouting of the power cable, but in such a way that keeps the options open in terms of the substation at a later stage. All those in favour of that, please show. All those, thank you. Are they against? And any abstentions? Clearly carried. Thank you very much. That then brings us back to you, Owen, and the update on the casual vacancy.
Yeah, the casual vacancy. Basically, we've now started the process with the statutory requirements with Somerset Council, and it's been notified. And at the next meeting in July, this council will need to decide on its co-option process and agree with the co-option policy. We do have a co-option policy, which was approved last year, and you may wish to change that policy in some way, but basically the policy exists. You all right there?
Is it worth we go?
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Do you want me to grab it for you? Okay. Thank you so much. Matrix next.
That's all right. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah, so basically the council will need to decide next month on, we adhere to the co-option process, we advertise on the various media we have, and then ready for September, when any people who come forward can be elected by this council. And as we did last year, of course, as you're familiar with. Any questions on that?
Thank you very much. Thank you. That then brings us to John Matthews.
So yeah, my which is again not printing it out this month. I propose really just to standardise the procedure for naming proposals in these meetings. As a side note, from last month's meeting, I had a number of unpleasant emails, phone calls, and other things happened to me, which is all part of fun and games of being in this village. But anyway, I would like to propose that either we standardise that we name proposers or that we don't. That is my proposal.
And again, do you want to just give an update on what? Because again, you sent out a note to members.
That's right. Yeah, basically, the agenda belongs to the clerk, effectively. And what normally happens is we carry over most things from a previous meeting. In other words, we've had discussions about it and we simply carry it forward. Or it's a statutory item. If a member, for whatever reason, for whatever subject, decides they want to put a proposal forward, then it is their proposal. It is not a proposal coming from the council, it's a proposal coming from that individual member. And that individual member is quite entitled to do that. There's no reason why the member couldn't. But it cannot come from the council because it's not the council that's agreed to the proposal. It's the members themselves that decide to put it forward. And that's why we name an individual proposal where we don't name normal proposals that are just statutory items going forward. Does that make sense?
Also, I think that it's quite often that, the next item on the agenda is matters of report, which is often a place where members will raise something that's going to go on the agenda for the next meeting. And obviously if they've raised it at this meeting and we agree that it's going onto the agenda for the next meeting, again, often that will not have a name put against it because it's been through this meeting and in fact the meeting has decided it's going on to the next agenda. So I mean, I think as things currently stand, as Owen has said, that it should be that if it's something that comes through the general workings of the meeting, then it will not have a name on it. If it's something that a specific council asks to go on the agenda, then it will have a name on it. And that would be the standard process that we would be following.
I think one of the things also to say, of course, is one of the things about parish councils is they have to be as transparent as possible. And clearly, if somebody's putting a proposal forward, it's unreasonable for them to put it forward at a public meeting. And that's a sort of theory behind why it is like that, which I think probably you'll agree does make fair degree of sense.
Is everyone happy they understand what the process is, and are they happy that that process is what we will be going forward with?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 9 is matters of report, so if we start with Colin.
Matters of report for next session, the future of the telephone box, please.
Okay. Mark. Tracy. John.
No.
Melina.
Meetings with builders.
Do you want to be a little bit more
Yes,
expressive as to what we are discussing in terms of meeting with
Yeah,
builders?
there's a prohibition in the tender policy against holding meetings with builders. So I'd just like discussion on whether anybody's had meetings with builders.
Okay. Jane, thank you. Adi,
Yeah, Burton Road, Station Road, Brent Street, that corner.
by the side of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's obviously it needs. We was on about some signs or something like that going up to say obviously the sharp corner. You know, when you're advancing and something like that, or didn't need something there because people's coming down there. We nearly had it early on. Car come round and well, excuse my language, but I did wet myself sort of thing myself. So it needs summer. It needs summer looking at. Also the bridge, Station Road, Ham Road, where we are with that, or you know, it's all overgrown. It's got worse. It's
That I
the
think
fencing's gone down
we're chasing highways, aren't we? Get permission in order
because
to
it's just
cut
yeah,
it.
because it's railway as well. Because it's a bridge, isn't it?
Okay.
Telephone box, which is obviously Colin's head.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
I've got nothing to put on. No.
No.
In which case, that next meeting is on the 5th of July. We've got a potential, if there's an urgent planning application that comes in, we've got a provisional meeting for the 21st of June. Thank you all very much for attending, and we'll close the meeting at 8 o'clock.
So first.
Thank you.
1 hour.